All right, let's jump right in. For decades, technical diving has lived by this one single rule. It's a phrase that has guided pretty much countless divers into the deep and, hopefully, brought them all back safely. Plan the dive and dive the plan. Sounds simple enough, right? I mean, it suggests discipline, precision, preparation, all things you definitely want in a technical diver. The whole idea was to create this perfect, detailed script on the surface and then follow it to the absolute letter once you were underwater. But here's the thing. The deep is not a predictable place at all. Currents can change in an instant, you might spot something incredible just out of view, or, an emergency can happen. So what happens when that perfectly rigid plan smacks right into the messy reality of the underwater world? Well, that's the very problem that kickstarted a revolution in how divers think. To really get this revolution, you first have to understand the old way of doing things. Back in the early days of tech diving, the plan, it wasn't just a guideline. No, it was this absolute, unchangeable script that was totally set in stone. Here's the best way to think about it. The old way, it was like trying to drive across the country using only a paper map you printed out before you left. You know your exact route, every single planned stop, the precise mileage. But what happens if a road is closed? Or you see a sign for the world's biggest ball of twine and want to check it out? You're kind of stuck. There is no recalculating button on a piece of paper. And making that paper map was so much work. I mean, divers had to sit down with these huge, pre-generated dive tables, calculate all their gas needs and oxygen exposure by hand, and then, get this, they'd copy the entire schedule onto a little plastic slate. And not just one plan. They'd have to do it for a main plan, a backup plan in case they went a little deeper, another one in case they stayed a little longer. It took forever and, as you can imagine, was super prone to human error. So here's the real kicker. The system's biggest strength, its rigidity, was also its biggest weakness. See that cool little cave over there? Want to check it out? Nope, can't. It's not on the slate. Any tiny little change, even just a few feet deeper or a minute longer, could basically throw the entire plan out the window, turning a moment of exploration into a potential crisis. And then technology showed up. Dive computers. These things could calculate decompression on the fly, in real time. They promised this amazing new era of flexibility. But the switch wasn't as simple as just strapping a new gadget to your wrist. You know what they say? Old habits die hard. And you can really see just how slow that change was on this timeline. At first, these powerful new computers were just seen as expensive, kind of untrustworthy backups to the good old handwritten slate. Then, even when they became the main tool, divers still planned a rigid, fixed-time dive. Why? So their slate could still work as a backup. It's crazy. They had a GPS in their hand, but were still stubbornly following the directions on the paper map. And this quote just captures the frustration of that time perfectly. You had divers spending a ton of money on this incredible tech that was built for real-time changes, but their whole way of planning forced them to ignore its best feature. They couldn't explore or adapt because their backup plan, that old slate, was still completely set in stone. So the real breakthrough, it wasn't a new piece of gear. It was intellectual. It was a total paradigm shift in what planning even means. It meant divers had to finally throw out that old, rigid script and start thinking in a completely new way. And this really shows you the heart of that change. The old goal was stay at the bottom for exactly 42 minutes. Simple. The new goal became stay at the bottom until I hit one of my pre-planned safety limits. See the difference? This freed the diver from being a slave to the stopwatch and actually empowered them to make smart decisions based on what was happening right then and there. So, what were these new limits? Okay, so the first limit is called minimum gas. Now, this isn't about how much gas you think you're going to use. No, this is the absolute rock bottom number. The pressure that guarantees you and your buddy can get all the way up to your next tank of gas, even during a total worst-case out-of-air emergency. It's your safety parachute. So, for instance, let's say your calculated minimum gas is 70 bar. That number becomes your hard stop, non-negotiable trigger. The second anyone on the dive team's gauge reads 70 bar, that's it. Fun's over. It is time to start heading up. The second limit is maximum time to surface, or max TTS for short. This answers a totally different but just as important question. How much decompression can I actually afford? You figure out the absolute longest ascent time, and that includes all your deco stops that your special decompression gas can handle. This becomes your time budget for the whole ascent. So if your calculations show your deco gas can support, say, a 72-minute ascent, well, that's your limit. Your dive computer is constantly tracking your time to surface in real time. As long as that number on your wrist stays below 72 minutes, you know for a fact you have enough gas to get home safely. This new way of thinking basically turned the dive computer from a simple timer and depth gauge into this amazing, dynamic dashboard. Suddenly, it's giving you a whole suite of tools that answer critical questions in real time, letting you actually manage risk while you're on the move. So this is what a modern dive plan looks like. See, it's not a rigid minute-by-minute schedule. It's more like a cheat sheet of your limits that you figured out for different potential depths. The hard planning still happens on the surface, but what you end up with is this flexible set of boundaries, not a rigid path. All you have to do underwater is watch your gas and your time to surface and start heading up when you hit either one of those limits. Modern computers also give you these incredible predictive tools. There's a feature called @5, which is basically a 5-minute crystal ball. It tells you exactly what your total ascent time will be if you just stay right where you are for 5 more minutes. This lets you make smart calls like, do I have enough time to go check out that old anchor I just saw? Or, do I need to start heading up right now? Then there's the Delta +5, which is even more slick. Think of it like a live meter for your body's decompression status. If it shows a positive number, you're still soaking up nitrogen and adding to your decompression time. If it shows a negative number, you're actually getting rid of it or off-gassing. You can use this to your advantage. By coming up just a few feet, you can watch that number go negative and find a perfect spot to hover without adding any more time to your ascent. And for the ultimate what-if moment, there's a tool called SurfGF. The GF stands for gradient factor, which is really just a number that represents your risk of getting decompression sickness. So SurfGF tells you in real time what that risk level would be if you had a major emergency and had to bolt directly to the surface this very second. It's your emergency eject button, your ultimate risk assessment tool. So when you put it all together, the new procedure is, well, it's beautifully simple, but it's also incredibly powerful. You plan your boundaries on the surface. Underwater, you just watch those boundaries and use your predictive tools to make smart choices. You're no longer just a passenger following a pre-written script. You're an active pilot managing your flight in real time. Now, it's really important to understand that this whole evolution isn't about making diving easier or getting rid of planning. Not at all. It's about making diving smarter. It's about completely redefining what it means to be a skilled and prepared technical diver. And honestly, this is the most important thing to take away from all this. The real change didn't happen in the gear. It happened between the diver's ears. The whole burden of planning shifted away from just tedious math and memorizing a script and moved towards a deeper, more conceptual understanding of risk, of time, and of gas. It actually requires more brain power, not less. Because at the end of the day, technology doesn't just replace skill, it demands new and more sophisticated skills. We've moved way beyond simply asking, what's the plan? The critical question for the modern diver is now much, much deeper. It is, do you truly understand the powerful tools you have at your disposal?